Before glass existed, before science, before even language, there was only water and light. Somewhere, tens of thousands of years ago, a person bent over a pool at dawn. The wind was still. The surface of the river shimmered. And then it happened. They saw movement answering their movement, eyes meeting eyes. That instant was the birth of self-awareness, the first time a living being recognized its own existence. It wasn't invention. It wasn't religion. It was reflection. That trembling moment, when the world looked back, shaped everything that followed. From it came art, vanity, fear, spirituality, consciousness itself. The mirror, in all its forms, became a silent teacher of identity. Before there were words for soul or self, there was the reflection. Early humans must have wondered, what is that other me? Is it spirit, ghost, or twin? Why does it move as I move, blink as I blink, yet never speak? The reflection was mystery made visible, a companion that existed only through attention. And from the beginning, humans sensed that seeing oneself was dangerous. Because what if that image could see back? As civilization grew, that question became myth. In Egypt, mirrors were sacred to Hathor, goddess of joy and rebirth. Her followers believed that the mirror contained light from the sun god Ra, the same light that animated all life. But with that power came risk. When someone died, their mirrors were hidden or covered, so that the soul could journey freely and not be trapped inside its own reflection. To the Egyptians, light was life, and a mirror, therefore, was a vessel of it. In ancient Greece, reflections became moral parables. The myth of Narcissus was not just a warning about vanity, but about obsession, about mistaking image for essence. He didn't die of pride. He died of confusion, unable to separate himself from what he saw. And that confusion has never truly left us. Across the world, the same pattern appeared. In China, mirrors were made of bronze, believed to repel evil and reflect hidden truth. Some were said to reveal the spirit beneath the skin, to show demons disguised as men. In Japan, the sacred mirror called Yada no Kagami represented purity and divine honesty. When the sun goddess Amaterasu hid herself in a cave, plunging the world into darkness, the other gods placed a mirror at the entrance. Drawn by curiosity, she looked into it, saw her own brilliance, and stepped back into the light, restoring life to the world. For the Japanese, reflection was enlightenment itself. In Mesoamerica, Aztec priests carved volcanic glass into perfect circles of black obsidian. They called them smoking mirrors. When they gazed into the darkness, they saw visions, gods, and destinies. Their most powerful deity, Tezcatlipoca, the lord of the smoking mirror, was said to watch all things through reflection. He didn't merely see, he knew. His mirror wasn't for vanity. It was for revelation. Even in early Celtic traditions, mirrors and still waters were seen as doors between worlds. Druids believed that lakes and rivers reflected not just the sky, but the realm of the dead beneath it. To stare into the surface too long was to risk crossing over. So reflections were treated with reverence and with fear. Everywhere on earth, mirrors carried the same paradox. They revealed what eyes could not see. To some, they were instruments of divinity. To others, traps of illusion. Yet every society agreed, reflection was never neutral. It had intention, memory, even will. Think of what it meant to the first people who saw their reflection not by accident but by choice. To pause at a stream, to recognize one's face, to touch the water, only to see it vanish. To realize that identity was fragile, temporary, bound to movement. The mirror taught impermanence long before philosophy did. It also taught morality. To see oneself clearly was to be accountable. To face one's reflection was to face truth, both beauty and flaw. That's why in so many cultures, mirrors were used in rituals of cleansing and confession. They weren't tools for vanity. They were tools for honesty. Over centuries, as humans polished stones into bronze, then bronze into glass, they weren't just improving clarity, they were chasing meaning. Every new mirror was a deeper question. Who am I when the image is perfect? And yet, the more realistic the reflection became, the more unsettling it felt. When glass mirrors spread through the ancient world, people called them living eyes. Some households forbade them entirely. Others hung them near doors to ward off spirits. In every home that owned one, the mirror was treated as an object of power, something to respect, not to play with. Even now, thousands of years later, that reverence hasn't faded. When someone covers a mirror during mourning, or feels uneasy walking past one in the dark, they're echoing ancient instincts. The fear that something might look back is older than history itself. And yet, so is fascination. Humans have always wanted to see themselves, to understand the shape of the invisible. The reflection is not just a surface of light. It's a bridge between consciousness and matter, between what we are and what we imagine ourselves to be. That bridge carried us from magic to myth, from religion to reason, and eventually to technology. It began in a pool of water, and will end in a sea of pixels. But the question remains the same. Every time we look, whether into bronze, glass, or screen, something ancient stirs within us, the same whisper that first echoed beside that river at dawn. What am I really seeing, my face or my soul? For centuries, reflections remained holy. But as the world entered an age of reason, curiosity replaced fear. People began to ask not what mirrors meant, but how they worked. Light was no longer just divine, it was measurable. And with that shift, the mirror began its transformation from mystery to instrument. In workshops across Renaissance Italy, mirrors gleamed beside pigments and parchment. Painters studied how light bent and changed. A mirror became their teacher, revealing how the eye perceives, how shadow gives form to truth. Leonardo da Vinci called painting the mirror of nature, believing that art was a reflection of reality itself. But even he sensed a hidden paradox. The mirror reveals, yet reverses. It shows truth, but backwards. And maybe that's why humanity has always trusted reflections less than reality. As glassmakers perfected their craft, the mirror left temples and entered palaces. In Venice, the art of making flawless glass was guarded like a royal secret. To own a Venetian mirror was to own power, literal control of light. Reflections became luxury, status, wealth. But for thinkers and inventors, mirrors were much more than decoration. They were keys to understanding how vision, and perhaps reality, worked. René Descartes saw in the mirror a metaphor for consciousness. He argued that awareness was reflection, the mind knowing itself. "I think, therefore I am," he wrote, as though the very act of thought was a mirror turned inward. To be alive was to see oneself existing. And in that sense, consciousness itself became the greatest reflection of all. The Enlightenment polished this idea further. Scientists like Newton studied light, not as mystery but as matter, something that could be split, measured, and predicted. He passed sunlight through a prism and found color hidden inside. That moment changed the world. For the first time, beauty had been broken into science. But something else broke too, the sense of wonder. When reflection became formula, the sacred turned ordinary. Still, the mirror continued to evolve. In the royal halls of Europe, enormous mirrors multiplied candlelight until rooms shimmered with gold. The Hall of Mirrors in Versailles wasn't just architecture. It was a statement. Power was no longer in the sword or crown, but in the ability to reflect the world itself. To own light was to command perception. Yet while kings surrounded themselves with glass, philosophers warned of illusion. The mirror, they said, may show what is real, or only what we wish to be real. Art, science, and spirit all stood before the same object, and each saw something different. By the 18th century, mirrors had become both symbol and question. They reflected the birth of reason, and the loss of mystery. But as always, humanity's fascination with seeing itself only grew stronger. And soon, the reflection would no longer vanish when the light faded. It would stay forever. The 19th century gave birth to the mirror that remembered. For the first time, light could be trapped. Photography turned reflection into permanence, a piece of time frozen in silver. It was breathtaking and terrifying. When people saw their faces appear on metal plates, they called it sorcery. How could an image survive without the person? Religious leaders warned that photographs could capture the soul. Scientists called it progress. But the truth lay somewhere in between. Photography didn't steal souls. It created new ones. Every portrait was a mirror that outlived its maker. Soon, the reflection began to move. Film made memory breathe. Audiences gasped as trains rushed toward them on screen. They had seen mirrors before, but never mirrors that moved. Cinema became the modern temple of reflection, where stories and faces shimmered in darkness. For the first time, humanity could watch itself dream. Yet something strange happened. The more reflections multiplied, the less we trusted them. Photographs could lie. Films could manipulate. Truth could be edited, reassembled, controlled. And with that, the reflection took power of its own. It could inspire, deceive, or define. Television arrived, turning every living room into a shrine of light. Millions gathered nightly to watch themselves refracted through actors, news, and screens. The reflection had gone global. For the first time, the species saw itself all at once. But even as it connected people, it began to divide them. Reflections became filters of reality. The myth of the mirror, once sacred, now wore the face of entertainment. Artists and philosophers began to ask again, do we still see truth, or only image? Has reflection replaced reality? And what happens to a civilization that spends more time watching itself than being itself? The ancients feared that mirrors could trap souls. Maybe they were right, just ahead of schedule. Because once reflections began to move, humanity stepped into its own illusion, willingly. And from that moment on, the reflection would never fade again. The 21st century is the age of mirrors without frames. Screens in pockets, lenses in doors, reflections that think. The mirror no longer just copies, it learns. It watches, measures, predicts. And every time we look at it, it looks deeper. Once we stared into rivers to find our souls. Now we stare into phones to find ourselves. The difference is only surface. The impulse is the same. Algorithms are the new oracles. They answer our questions before we ask them, offering comfort, distraction, validation. Who am I? Who's watching me? The answers come in numbers, likes, and endless scrolls. It feels like choice, but it's reflection disguised as control. The mirror has become interactive. It doesn't wait quietly. It responds. It tells us what we desire, who we resemble, what to fear, and what to buy. It shapes our self-image pixel by pixel. And as it does, we drift from truth toward performance. The reflection becomes the goal, not the byproduct. Identity becomes a loop. But in the heart of this digital labyrinth, the oldest myths whisper again. The story of Narcissus plays out across billions of screens. He leans closer, endlessly entranced, unaware that the reflection he adores is no longer real. Only now, the pond has Wi-Fi. Yet there's beauty too. For all its danger, the digital mirror also connects, reuniting families, spreading knowledge, inspiring empathy. It reflects both our best and worst, reminding us that technology is never evil or pure. It simply amplifies what already exists. We once covered mirrors in mourning. Now, we refresh them every second. The mirror has not changed, only our relationship with it. And maybe, deep down, the same question remains. When the reflection watches back, who truly holds the power, the seer or the seen? Science tells us that a mirror is only light obeying physics, angles and energy, nothing more. But meaning cannot be reduced to equations. Reflection is not just what light does. It's what consciousness is. Inside the human brain, mirror neurons echo the actions of others, allowing empathy to exist. We learn by reflection. We feel by reflection. We understand each other by seeing ourselves mirrored in another's eyes. The ancients said the soul could travel through mirrors. Perhaps they were describing this exact phenomenon in the only language they knew. Physicists now describe the universe as a system of symmetry. Every force mirrored by its opposite, every particle balanced by another. Reality, at its core, behaves like an infinite hall of mirrors. Observation itself changes what is observed. It's as if the cosmos needs witnesses to exist, as though the universe is reflecting upon itself through us. That thought leads back to the oldest truth. We are not outside the reflection. We are part of it. Every thought, every invention, every act of understanding is the universe polishing its own surface to see more clearly. Technology, then, is not the enemy of spirit. It's its evolution. The mirror has moved from stone to glass, from glass to screen, from screen to mind. It keeps changing form, but never its purpose: to remind consciousness of itself. When we stare into a mirror, or into the blue glow of a screen, we are performing the same ritual as our ancestors at the river. We are searching for the same thing: recognition. We want to know that we exist, that our image has meaning. And if we look closely enough, if we stop fearing what looks back, we might see that the reflection was never separate at all. It was never watching us. It was always us watching ourselves. Because in the end, the mirror doesn't just reflect light. It reflects awareness, the oldest form of magic there is. And the more clearly we see ourselves, the more light the world returns.